And we're live, everyone. GM on this Thursday afternoon. I'm Dan Roberts. I'm the editor-in-chief of Decrypt. Thanks, first of all, to CoinMarketCap for hosting us. And I hope everyone is having a good day despite all of the market madness. Pleased to have our special guest, Dan Held from Team Kraken, although you might just know Dan from his massive Twitter persona. Dan, good afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start this way. I mean, you and I go way back. We've known each other for years. I think I knew you when, as they say. Of course, now when I run into you at a crypto conference and, we walk down the halls, everyone recognizes you, wants to take a selfie with you. Talk to us a little bit about your journey. I mean, you've still got your day job at Kraken. What is your kind of take on the last few weeks right now? And when you look back, because now, we've both been doing this for years and years. I mean, I first wrote about Bitcoin in 2011. What do you make of how far the industry has come?
Yeah, I mean, we both share that same journey. When you first wrote about it and when I first got into this space around 2012, there wasn't a lot of people there. There was a handful of folks. I mean, you probably knew every single person in the industry at that time, and so did I back in the 2012 and 2013 era. So yeah, my journey starts then. So in 2012, got into Bitcoin, and in 2013, moved out to San Francisco, got involved in the Bitcoin meetup there at 20 Mission, which you must have gone to one of those meetups. It was this old, really, really kind of run down place in the Mission. And that's where the Bitcoin community started in San Francisco. And this included like Jesse Powell, Brian Armstrong, Fred Ursum, Jed McCaleb from Ripple Stellar. It was in Charlie Lee. It was an interesting group. I mean, that I'm the only non-billionaire out of the group. It's what makes me feel a little poor, but it was oh darn. Yeah. So, it's been a really crazy journey since then. I built my first product back in 2013 called Zero Block. Zero Block got bought by blockchain.com. Zoom forward a little bit, did some time working at Uber headquarters. And then my last startup was Interchange, and we got bought by Kraken. And so built out some of the marketing function here at Kraken. So yeah, it's been kind of a wild journey. It's been almost 10 years for me in the space, which is a long time. Back in the early era, it was just Bitcoin. There weren't even altcoins. Or there were very few. And then there was a 2015 altcoin cycle and 2017 and 18, and now 2020 and 2021. And so, yeah, the narratives have shifted a lot. A lot of market participants, it was primarily retail up until 2019, 2020, when you started to have the institutional players come in. Now I think you and I probably feel it almost feels unreal to see big institutional folks like JP Morgan talk positively about Bitcoin. I mean, that's just weird to see almost at this era, because back in 2013, we were regarded as lunatics. So yeah, I think like over the last couple of weeks though, I think we've seen a big shift in the macro environment of a lot of people going risk off. Crypto right now is being considered risk on. So Bitcoin and other crypto assets are being sold off as people are trying to de-risk. I think there's a lot of fear in the market. I think we see this in equities. We see this in tech equities, especially a lot of like really, really darling tech companies in the 2020 COVID market, like Peloton, and you've got Netflix. These are all coming crashing down pretty intensely. I mean, Snapchat dropped 45% in one day a couple of days ago. Yeah. So yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of risk off activity, and crypto is being bucketed into that right now.
It's a great answer, and I want to dive in a little more, especially when it comes to narratives and how kind of the public narratives and reaction to crypto have changed. But first of all, I mean, let's stick with you. I'm really glad you mentioned Zero Block because, I like to give you shit about your tweeting and the following you've built up on Twitter. I mean, whatever it is, 500,000 something followers. But, I want people to understand that, you created Zero Block and got it acquired. I mean, you were a builder. And I think the subhead of this event is like, ship it or build it. And it's very appropriate because now that we may be, I don't know if the jury's out or if we all agree, if we're in another crypto winter, I remember in 2018, the sort of theme you kept hearing in the rallying cry became, well, we're heads down and building, and that's okay. And at the time, it was sort of like, you have to say that because nothing is good right now. But then the truth is that a lot of things were built in 2018 that became the backbone of this industry in 2020 and 2021 that really took off during the pandemic. So, I guess I'd ask if that's what's going to happen now because of the past few weeks. Do you start to hear that again, that, well, it's time to build and we'll just put our heads down and focus on utility and real products?
Yeah, this is our third cycle together. So, we certainly see these narratives ebb and flow of people being really risk on, people going levered, market peak. You've got peak FOMO, peak excitement, and then you've got the bear market of expectations being reset, people going from hodl to buildle, switching around the D and the L there. That was the narrative in 2018 is we're going to go buildle now. I'm a builder. So Zero Block, for those who don't remember, because this was a long time ago in 2013, was the most popular mobile app in Bitcoin. So it allowed you to check the real-time price of Bitcoin, had charts, news feed, etc. By the way, this is before CoinDesk even existed or CoinMarketCap, to give you an idea of how old this is. It's been quite the journey. But in terms of looking at, what do we go do next? The original Bitcoin ethos was all about building. Back in that early era, everyone had their own side project because they needed to go build something to make the ecosystem better. And I think we've definitely seen a lot, take that and multiply it by 10,000 in terms of the amount of resources and individuals looking at it now. We've got A players across all of tech wanting to come build things in the crypto ecosystem. We've got VC funds raising tens of billions of dollars in aggregate to go deploy into this ecosystem. So I don't think this winter is going to be as harsh as the other ones. I think you've got A players combined with a lot of funding, and they're going to go find and build products that deliver value to customers. So, I don't think we're going to see it. We didn't have that big of a blow off top either. We didn't see Bitcoin really hit that peak FOMO moment when it just was. I think you felt that before in 2018 and 2013, this palpable energy of just pure FOMO. And I didn't really feel that this time. It felt like it was accelerating, but it didn't feel like a blow off top. So it makes me feel like there might be a little bit more of a muted bear market. But yeah, in those muted bear market, in whatever bear market we're in, it's about building, and it's about building that future for the ecosystem. But yeah, it's the 2015 bear market was incredibly intense. Not many companies survived that, and I feel for the old folks because a lot of Bitcoiners put all their Bitcoin into their startup right when Bitcoin was bottoming, and so they lost their Bitcoin in their company. So yeah, I think we've never been in a stronger position where the ecosystem is very large, A players, and lots of funding.
I'm probably inordinately obsessed with narratives and headlines because I'm on the media side. And I saw how a week ago, all of the crypto articles came out, and sort of many places that clearly have the view that crypto is a scam and a fraud or stupid were able to do a victory lap. And that's what happens whenever there's a big crash, right? I mean, one publication ran something that said the crypto grift is finally exposed. And another publication said something like, it turns out many crypto investors are now naked, or the emperor has no clothes. You're a perfect guy to ask. I mean, there are certainly people in your life, maybe even outside of just business dealings, who probably say to you like, okay, so you're this big Bitcoin guy, but it's so volatile. Or, we've heard all the kind of complaints from crypto skeptics. It's either, I still can't buy my morning cup of coffee with Bitcoin, or what can you do with it? And for a while, the popular retort was like, well, it's digital gold and that's great. It's a great investment. You buy it and hold on to it. But a lot of people say, well, is that really enough? I mean, it was, originally we know the white paper said peer-to-peer electronic cash system, and it's not really being used that way yet. What are your favorite things that you say when you get approached by these folks with the heavy crypto skepticism, especially when we've just had this dramatic price correction?
Yeah, I mean, this is a narrative as old as time. Negative narratives around Bitcoin have always existed. As Bitcoin grows in adoption, there's always going to be naysayers who go, I don't believe it. I don't believe it's valuable. I don't believe it's solving a problem. It's funny because there's a lot of different flavors of what we call, and this is normally called in the ecosystem called FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And so while FUD is typically classified as unnecessary criticism. Not criticism that has a good rooting. There are some good criticisms of Bitcoin and in crypto, but I think FUD generally lies in the kind of the undeserved criticism.
Not in good faith.
Yeah, not in good faith. I feel like some of the arguments are really weak. Like a lot of people back in the day used to say, "Isn't Bitcoin used for money laundering and drugs?" And you'd go, "Well, so is the dollar. Why aren't you complaining about that?" And that narrative is largely faded, which is really interesting to see. So it depends on the season. It depends on the bull bear market cycle and which one. So we've seen that narrative basically fade away. And now the energy FUD narrative, or Bitcoin consumes energy, is starting to rise as environmental concerns rise. And you have all sorts of other ones as well. But if we go into the basic narrative of, why do I need Bitcoin? Why is it useful? I think Bitcoin has demonstrated beyond a reasonable doubt, if you look across the world and different people in South America and Europe and Africa and in the United States, they all need a place to store their value that is hard to seize by a government, that's immutable, which can't be censored. I think over the last 5 years, which is between the last cycle and now, we've definitely seen the rise of political censorship start to really accelerate. So I think the censorship resistance element of Bitcoin is incredibly powerful. And then also during COVID, we saw money printer go burr. That's when the meme started. And with a 21 million hard cap, that makes the Jerome Powell just making them dollar bills fly. It's I think in this moment, it's very, very it very much highlights Bitcoin's value prop of having that 21 million hard cap, of having a community that will never want to change that hard cap, in contrast to a very politicized money printer go burr machine, which will print money at politicians, will, which as we're now feeling in our pocketbook and at the gas tank, inflation eventually catches up with you, and we're starting to see that hit. So yeah, I think the criticism that Bitcoin doesn't do anything useful is incredibly misguided. And I think just usually shows someone's predisposition to not like something that they don't personally use. While I don't crochet, I certainly don't think crocheting is not valuable. I mean, some people value it and it's all subjective. So that's ultimately where this lies.
I was just talking to two of my Decrypt colleagues today just about how there are so many corners of tech, or even not tech, as you say, crochet, other hobbies, whatever it is, sports, that many, many people have no interest in, and that's okay. But it is still remarkable to me, even after having covered this stuff for 12 years, that people are so triggered by crypto. It's like, okay, if you're not interested in crypto, ignore it. But people seem to need to announce and create an entire career out of the fact that they think crypto is stupid and a scam. And I guess, a good follow-up to your point about the current flavor of the month for crypto skeptics is the environmental fears. I guess I'd ask what you think will happen and how it will play out in a regulatory sense. Like, are you concerned that regulators and lawmakers will actually really seek to get in the way? Or do you take the more optimistic view that things like the Biden executive order are actually pretty encouraging, because what it shows is, yes, they want to regulate, but that's not the same. This is what I like to say. That's not the same as trying to shut it down.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's both a positive and a negative. I think Biden's executive order came out very neutral. I think it was more of an exploratory, hey, let's work with the industry and find a new regulatory framework to work within. As I've mentioned and kind of used in a comparison before, crypto is this free garden where you can run around and do whatever you want, but you still need to go through a doorway or an exchange or an on-ramp into that crypto ecosystem. So when it comes to regulatory frameworks, they typically apply just at the doorways, of people getting into crypto, because once it enters the crypto space, it's can't be censored, is difficult to regulate. When it comes to ESG, and what I find so funny about Bitcoin's environmental concerns is twofold. One, last time I checked, ESG stands for three things, not just one thing. And Bitcoin's governance is phenomenal. It's the best financial governance mechanism we've ever had. It's a completely neutral governance system. So to only focus on the energy consumption and not focus on the governance is really misguided. And social, S stands for social. So to have that social impact, people ignore that and just focus on the energy, I feel like is very much not in the ethos of what ESG stands for. When it comes to environmental concerns, a lot of folks call out Bitcoin's energy consumption. And so I think there's a couple different fun ways to think about that. One is, I don't remember the last time someone criticized me for building a vault or a wall or locks on my door to protect things I care about. That requires a lot of energy to go build those. I mean, just look at castles. Those took a ton of energy, or tanks or planes or aircraft carriers. I mean, those require enormous amounts of energy to build, to go protect something that you care about. Well, how do we build a wall or a vault around things in the digital world? Bitcoin uses proof of work or real world energy to protect digital assets. And so I don't think anyone would ever say like protecting the things you care about is a waste of energy. And so when most people criticize it, they're criticizing it because they just don't like Bitcoin. And then, if you want to compare Bitcoin's energy consumption relative to other types of money, look at the existing fiat system, all those buildings, all the bank servers, all the people inside of there that, remember, individual people require energy and food in their own homes and their own cars. and their entire, energy sort of pyramid there. So I think like when people criticize Bitcoin's energy consumption, they typically have never looked at their own existing financial system. And what you find is that they don't really think critically about it at all. They just don't like Bitcoin. And then even when you call them out on that, they start to move the goalpost and go, well, we should always move to less and less energy. And it's like, okay, so basically you're not going to be happy no matter how little energy Bitcoin consumes, and you just don't like Bitcoin.
And I like the examples you listed there better than, for a while, the favored example from Bitcoin people was Christmas lights. They said Christmas lights take up a lot of electricity. It's like, well, sure. But those are some better real world examples. Another one I'd seen lately was dryers.
Oh, yeah.
But I always like to just grab this moment, we're halfway through our time, to remind anyone watching that I think we can take some questions. So make sure you submit questions and we'll get to them toward the end. Let's transition, Dan, and talk more about kind of, we've been doing the current era and narratives. Let's talk about the big picture. Are you a Bitcoin maximalist?
That's a great question. I would say I'm a Bitcoin moderate or a Bitcoin mostimalist. I love Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the reason why we're all here. I think Bitcoin is our best chance at having freedom. And I think that Bitcoin is the most solid foundation in which to build upon. I also think NFTs are interesting. I don't care if people buy NFTs or not. It's digital art, it's community, that's whatever. I don't think you need necessarily the same level of censorship resistance that you do with Bitcoin. Similarly, I don't care if people own physical, real art in their homes either. I don't really care. I'm more of a libertarian. Let people do whatever they want with their money. So, while I don't personally, invest in some of these other assets, I think people's ability to go check them out and play around with them is certainly interesting, cool. And like, there are some interesting innovations. Like I've looked at AMMs and how, yield farming works. And some of these are really interesting and super cool. NFTs are very interesting. I don't personally invest in them. And, for my audience, I only recommend Bitcoin because Bitcoin to me represents the best return per unit of risk, because you can easily pick another coin that might go up higher than Bitcoin. But as we're seeing in a bear market, they dip harder than Bitcoin. And so what lasts throughout the cycles? Well, Bitcoin is the one permanent thing that's been around for the longest time. And there's good reason. Bitcoin solves a big problem of reinventing money, and it's the most sound money that we have. So yeah, I'm a Bitcoin mostimalist, but I certainly wouldn't put myself in the camp of just rejecting everything to reject everything.
I like that mostimalist term. So you don't personally own anything but BTC, it sounds like.
Just Bitcoin's my thing. I mean, look, the dollar is a shit coin. I've got a bunch of equity shit coins. So no, I mean, I've got other investments outside of Bitcoin, but yeah, I don't have a big crypto portfolio that's diversified into a bunch of other stuff.
Stonks. We need a word for stonks. That's the
stonks aren't exactly a sound money. They're, I own equities. I trade options occasionally for fun. I consider that very speculative but Bitcoin's crypto. That's my holding.
Let's stick with this for a second. I mean, it's interesting when you say, mostimalist, but I'm not, so anti everything else, dismissive of it. It's remarkable to me. There still are so many people that are, and they, even to the point where they're kind of triggered by the entire Ethereum ecosystem, NFTs, the idea of Web3. We've covered closely this fascinating tension between, Jack Dorsey and P. Marca, Mark Andreessen of A16Z, where, one side says the whole idea of Web3 is really just a thing created by VCs who are buying altcoins and shit tokens early, and then they dump them and make more money. Other people say, well, wait a minute, Web3 is this idealized future of the internet where blockchain underpins it. Why do you think that kind of everything that has come after Bitcoin is so triggering to some of the early Bitcoin OGs?
Yeah, I think this is a fascinating thread to go down. So one is that most people don't remember the altcoin boom of like 2014 through 2016. There was Frycoin. There was Primecoin. Do you remember Primecoin? I actually mined Primecoin.
Trump coin, I remember.
Yeah, there's all sorts of different kind of crazy coins. And, it was some pretty bad projects. I mean, these were pretty garbage projects. So back in the day, and even Brian Armstrong tweeted back in 2016, we should ignore everything else. Let's just build on top of Bitcoin. He actually has a tweet that says that. So even Brian Armstrong, which he's considered, I'd say, very, very more Web3 and just crypto, not even Bitcoin at all. Even him and all the way up through 2016 felt that way. So that kind of captures the feeling of that moment of back in that day, a lot of that stuff was pretty garbage. I mean, it was pretty bad. And then you had the 2017, 2018 ICO bubble. And let's put it that way, a lot of that stuff wasn't great either. So,
You're kidding.
Bitcoiners, BitConnect wasn't a good thing to invest in. So, BitConnect was an open Ponzi scheme that was worth $4 or $5 billion, which I guess we saw that happen recently with a recent blow up. But when we look at these projects, I think a lot of Bitcoiners were rightfully skeptical. They're like, wait a second, this is like really bad token economics. The founders are really sketchy. Everything I've seen has collapsed. Why would I go invest in this? And, so from that era, from 2013 all the way through 2020, they were largely right. I mean, most of the stuff was pretty poor or hadn't been well executed on. And so in 2020, I think we saw the rise of protocol market fit with some DeFi applications, which is around DEXs and, AMMs and yield farming and some kind of more novel use cases that I think finally found some protocol market fit. And then also, NFTs finally grew in adoption to where people started to actually use them. So I think we saw some of that protocol market fit, which I think changes a little bit of that narrative. But what's funny though, is when Jump Trading, so Jump just did an analysis of all the crypto assets out there. And when they looked at it, extremely few outperformed Bitcoin over time. And so, yes, certainly if you pick the right one, you could massively outperform Bitcoin if you time it right. But they looked at, and I think they did this a month ago, and they looked at the top 100 or top 200 crypto assets. And it's over time, 90% of them underperform Bitcoin. So yeah, there's a narrative of I trade alts to get more Bitcoin. You can do that. And good, look, it's just, people are free to trade whatever they like. So go for it. But hodling does have its utility. Hodling does enable you to survive and thrive this long. And a lot of people just hear about the success stories where people traded and did super well. Well, there's a lot of people who didn't do very well and they don't like to talk about it. So I'd say Bitcoiners are both wrong and right at the same time. They're right in some sort in directionally for most of their argument around hey, your best return is in Bitcoin. There's a lot of bad projects out there. They're not wrong there, but they're also not right to just ignore everything. I think there's certainly some new novel, interesting use cases that we've seen validated by the market. So yeah, with that being said, that's why I'm a maximalist, is I'm in the weird hated ground between both, where I don't reject everything, but I reject most things. And so both sides have their bone to pick with me.
It's a good segue because I mentioned Dorsey. We're talking about the maxis and narratives, but I want to get your take on what's going on with Twitter. Especially, we're doing this live virtual summit. We probably got a lot of people who came in through the Twitter door. And in some ways, and I wrote a column about this, if Elon Musk takes over this company, there's a lot of crypto related things he wants to do. But then for someone like you, a lot of the crypto related things that Twitter has done so far are Ethereum born. Allowing people to verify an NFT profile picture. So what do you make of where Twitter stands with the Musk process and drama?
Yeah, Twitter is where we both live. We both live and breathe. Twitter is a really bad habit. I've got almost 600,000 followers on there. So the temptation to go on Twitter and post something because there's 600,000 people ready and willing to engage with you is really tempting. So I think Twitter is a phenomenal tool for business and learning, though. It is fantastic. You can get a straight brain feed from the smartest people in the world. And what is the value of that? And then you can see the smartest people in the world interact with each other in semi-real time. It's incredible. When you look at news articles, half of them basically have a tweet embedded in there that is the inception of the news article, right? So Twitter is there's the real world and then there's Twitter. And so I love Twitter from that regard. Also, it's great for if you want a job. The first hire at Uber tweeted at Uber and wanted a job, and they gave him a job. I think it was Ryan Graves. So the first employee at Uber tweeted at the Uber Twitter handle. And I've sold a company. I sold Zero Block through Twitter, actually. Roger Ver actually DM'd us, and that's how we sold it. And so, I've hired half my team at Kraken. I tweeted about the roles I had, and they applied because of that. So Twitter is a phenomenal business tool. It's a phenomenal way to learn. There's also the negative side of it's very intense. There's a lot of people looking to dunk on each other. People get really heated. There's a lot of reply guys, then there's Elon Musk, who's the king of the trolls. He, for him, think about it. He's the wealthiest person in the world. He's crushed the aerospace, defense contractor industry, which is 100 years old. He crushed the automobile industry, which is 100 years old, by himself, basically. I mean, not by himself. He had massive teams, but he had that will to go power through it. So what do you go do next? What's fun?
Twitter.
And so I think Twitter is his thing. Twitter is like, he can throw out stuff and antagonize different politicians or whomever he feels like it. And so he's got the whole world watching, and he gets to do whatever he wants. So I think for him, Twitter, though, what he's realizing is that Twitter is an extremely important tool to ensure that his voice is out there, which ensures the success of SpaceX and Tesla. Without that, he can't craft narratives and fight narratives. Otherwise, he has to work through journalists for them to take his written statement and put it in an article in the right framing. Versus Twitter, he can post, or he could put a blog post out, but Twitter is the most viral way to have his ideas spread across the world. So if he doesn't protect those, I could very easily see Twitter canceling him. Now, Twitter's between a rock and a hard place. Even if they wanted to cancel him, if you did, that would cause a massive uproar, much bigger than even Trump. So, I'd say Elon's one of the most popular people in the world. Trump wasn't one of the most popular people in the world. Elon spans beyond countries. So, I think that for Elon, it's about protecting his voice. I think it's also a little bit of entertainment. I don't think there's Twitter is a kind of a shit company in terms of financials. So yeah, I think that basically Elon is looking to protect his voice and to also to play a bit of a game.
And he certainly has things to fix, which I know because just from the tweet about this panel right now that we're in, I'm looking at Twitter and all the replies are just like bots and spam. So there's a lot they need to fix about that. That may be because of your following or CoinMarketCap. I'm not sure.
Either way, yeah, the spam problem is a terrible problem. This didn't happen until about a year ago, and it's gotten really, really bad. Yeah, and also the imposter accounts. I have so many people hit me up and they're like, Dan, I sent you $1,000. I'm like, I'm verified. That's not me. It's like Dan Held with like 5 zeros at the end.
Oh, I just sent a Dan Held my life savings. I shouldn't have done that. Uh-oh.
That's the real me. That's the real me. No, you're good.
Yeah. Dan, thanks so much. We got to leave it there. I hope everyone enjoyed. There's so much more to talk about, but you and I will talk soon. And thanks again to CMC for the event. Everyone can follow Dan at Dan Held on Twitter. Dan, have a good one.
Thanks, Daniel. Cheers.